Hello and welcome to I'm a Fan of That, podcast about all things fandom told through objects, stories, and studies, with a bit of silliness along the way. Your hosts on this journey are pop culture writer, journalist, and cosplay expert, Holly Swinyard, and myself, Vivian Asimos, a public anthropologist and pop culture academic with a PhD in religion and popular culture. Join us as we wander down the incredible and intriguing path into fan culture, its history, the people who make it up, and the way that we look at this ever-growing part of our society. Fair warning, we may talk about some adult themes, use some adult language, and possibly get a little bit nerdy about the whole thing. You have been warned. Hello and welcome to I'm a Fan of That, where we talk about the wonderfully complicated worlds of fandom through the objects we love. I am Vivian Asimos.
And I am Holly Swinyard, and I'm definitely not doing a dance that you guys can't see.
We got on the call and the first thing that I heard Holly say was dance time!
Yeah! Woo! I've got a lot of energy today.
Yeah, I was about to say, if that hints into what kind of episode this is gonna be.
Like, the last few episodes we recorded, I've been, like, super sleepy because I've been finishing deadlines and all this sort of stuff. And for some reason today, I'm like, yes, all the energy's back. Woo!
Rejuvenated.
I know, it's great.
Well, today, I have no object.
I'm wounded.
I have a thing.
A thing?
I have
is
a
it
thing that is not an object. It is my arm.
I feel like there's some, like, really weird philosophical thing about whether the human body can be an object involved in this.
I mean, we might get to that, but but I have on my left, I think that's my left, I have on my left arm the words of the One Ring, because again, contractually obligated to mention Tolkien in every episode. I have the words from the One Ring around my arm. It's in like a brown, because I like it.
Pretty.
And yeah, that was my very first tattoo. I say very first, like I have thousands of them. I only have 2 at the moment, but I've got a 3rd one planning, and I'm saving up for it and hoping that some advances on the book can cover it.
So, just to prove that me and Vivian are the same person with the same brain cell, my first tattoo is also a Lord of the Rings tattoo. And it's also in Elvish, but it is not the ring rhyme. It's the Elvish word for storyteller, which doesn't actually exist. You have to translate it from English into phonetic Sindarin, yes, and then into the script. And so it says keeper of law, but it means storyteller, which I'm a nerd, and I just nerded that so hard. But it was also my first tattoo of the 2 that I have at time of recording, because I am getting my 3rd one in June.
Oh,
4th.
So exciting!
Yeah, and my other tattoo is a Star Wars tattoo. If people don't know, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm shocked. What?
Never has come up before.
What? But my Star Wars tattoo is a tattoo of symbols from the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels series, because I'm not just a Star Wars fan, I'm a Star Wars animated show fan. So, you know, I feel like I need to describe it. It's the Clone Force 99 symbol in red, and then the Fulcrum symbol in orange and yellow, and the J guys in green and blue, because it's a little rainbow, as well as being nerdy Star Wars things. I just have to tell everybody I'm queer at any given moment. Obviously. Maybe we'll post pictures of the tattoos.
We should, yes. I mean,
yeah,
I have pictures of all the things. In case you didn't know, by this point in the season, in all of the descriptions, there are pictures of the objects, and I will probably also be posting them on Instagram and things like that as we go. So yeah, you'll be able to see our lovely tattoos.
And I'll also hopefully have my 3rd one by the time this episode goes out. Yes, I will. So we'll include a picture of that, but that's a secret thing, so you can all see it when it comes out. You'll know when it's there. Why am I keeping it secret? That's stupid. It's from Owl House, because, again, I am both a nerd and a queer, and therefore, of course, I'm getting a tattoo from Owl House for my non-binary love, Rain Whispers. So,
Aww.
You know, yeah, it's going to be awesome, and I'm very excited. And it definitely doesn't match what my partner has. It's so terrible. Like, we've got matching tattoos. Oh.
think that's fine. I remember one of my friends was talking about how he got a matching, like, coupley tattoo. It's like puzzle pieces that fit together.
Oh, that's cute.
But she has one and he has the other one. And he was describing that to a friend, and the person was like, "Ooh, that's a bit of a commitment." And he's like, "You mean my wife?" Like, you know what also is a commitment? Marriage.
Yeah. Like, I'm kind of here, like, we've been together for nearly 5 years. Like, I feel like at this point,
yeah,
like, can't get rid of them. But also, you know, Rain to me is a very important character, and so the tattoo in and of itself it's for the character and their meaning to me as much as it is connected also to my partner. So, like, it's not quite so, oh my god, they fit together. They're just similar, you know? They're cousins, not sisters, these tattoos.
I thought that it would be fun to start with the story of me getting my tattoo.
Oh, yes, because it does make me laugh every single time.
I got the tattoo when I was living in Durham, and...
What a sexy city that is.
I know. It is a very beautiful city if you ever get the chance to go.
It's got a nice cathedral.
It's a very nice cathedral.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, it's like the biggest, very specific cathedral in a very specific area. You know how all the cathedrals are like, we are the number one of this very intensely specific category that we made up. But it is very pretty. It's got Cuthbert and Venerable St. Bede in there as well.
Woo.
I've got a really funny story.
I feel like this is now just tourist information about Durham.
Welcome to Durham, as you see on your right. No, when I brought I got a really funny story of my mom meeting Venerable St. Bede, because she grew up Catholic and is still kind of Catholic, and she freaked the hell out when I didn't tell her that he was there, and she nearly screamed and died, and it was amazing. But anyway, so I'm getting this tattoo. I go there in Durham, and the guy had no idea what the hell was happening. I had to pull up the image and online, and he had to, like, do all the thing. I was able to just walk in and do it, so I wasn't like a big scheduled thing. Because Durham, I mean, it's a very small city as well, so it wasn't like a huge issue. And but as I'm actually getting the tattoo, so the gun is out, he is lasering it into my skin, and he asked,
that's how that works.
Yeah. I know everything about tattoos. He was asking me how many other tattoos I had, and I said, "Oh, this is my first one." And he was completely shocked because I wasn't, I don't know, crying from the pain or something, even though it really wasn't bad. And then the other reason is because, and as he said, most people get a meaningful tattoo for their first tattoo.
What? No, like this. I don't understand why if you got, like, you're getting, like, the ring rhyme put on yourself, like, surely you realise that that's, like, a meaningful thing to that person. Like,
yeah, I just said it is, and he was. Yeah. And he just shut up and didn't ask any further questions.
That's so funny. So I think it's funny because my first tattoo I nearly passed out because I have never, like, broken a bone or anything. I've never had major surgery. My body had, at that point, I have now, but, like, at that point when I got it, I had never had, like, a major physical trauma, I guess. Like, pain was an alien concept to me. And I have a very low pain threshold as well, just generally. So I went into shock when I had my first tattoo because my body went, what the hell is happening? Also because it's a white ink tattoo, which a lot of people are like, don't get white ink, blah, 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 because it fades. But my tattoo artist, who's a very, very good tattoo artist, did it with a much bigger, heavier needle to drive it further into the skin so it wouldn't do that. Yeah, that was a lot.
Yep.
It was quite a lot. And what's kind of funny, this story, is that I was having this tattoo done in my house because the tattoo artist who was doing it is, like, the other best friend of my best friend. And so we'd set up all her tattoo stuff in our house, like her chair and the table, and we cleaned everything down. So we did it at home, which meant that I was at least in a safe environment in which to go into shock. And that was fun. It's still there. Like, I've had it touched up once, and it's been 8 years.
I was about to say, because it also might be, because I know where you get tattoos can affect a lot of how painful it is. So the one on my arm was basically nothing, but I recently got another one on the inside of my wrist, on my right, and that one hurt a lot more than my arm did.
Just so people know, my tattoo, my Lord of the Rings one, is running along the bone of my wrist on the inside. It was pretty
I could
bad.
imagine. I think when it gets closer to the bone or something, it's...
And my Star Wars one is the same on the other arm, but on the outside, again, along the bone, because I hate myself. And I'm like, no, I'm going to put it where I want it, and I don't. The amount of people have been like, that's a really terrible place to have a tattoo. It's going to hurt so much. I'm like, yeah, but it'll look real cool. Literally.
It is that thing of, like, the pain is momentary, but the where it is going to be permanent, so you might as well.
It looks really cool.
Yeah.
And the one I'm getting in June... one I will have by the time this episode goes out, is going just on my ribs. And again, my tattoo artist is like, oh, that's going to be... And I'm like, you say that, but also I've had top surgery recently, and therefore I can't actually feel anything there. So
get it quick while I'm still anesthesia.
Like, I've lost the sensation in the top layer of skin. I can feel it in the muscle underneath, so I'll be able to feel the vibration, but I won't. It's really interesting. Like, I just can't feel it. It's very strange. So I'm like, let's go for it while that's still happening, while the nerves are still reattaching.
Gotta go fast.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the feeling back like the day before.
And I'll be like, bugger, no! She was just like, that is such a weird thing to be able to say. And I'm like, use what you got, I guess.
Yeah.
But the reason we're talking about tattoos is not just to share our strange tattoo stories. We wanted to talk about that thing of meaning, right? So your tattoo artist saying, surely you're meant to be getting something meaningful. Mm-hmm. And for you, it is meaningful, right? Like, these are things that we have decided to permanently put into our bodies I don't really know
both,
how tattoos work.
I think. It's like in the dermis, yeah?
It is, yeah, exactly. In a very, very permanent way. And I kind of feel like that is something that you gotta like the thing a lot to do that. You gotta really like it. Not for everybody, of course. Some people don't, that's not the case. They just want a pretty picture. And that's also entirely
I find
valid.
The more tattoos you get, the less you care.
I've seen that. I mean, obviously for everybody it's different. Like, everybody's attachment to these sorts of things is very different. But I do think once you get to a point, you're like, cool, that looks cool, let's add it. Or at least my experience for people with lots of tattoos is that. But
yeah.
Can't speak for everybody. Because I have... So my Star Wars tattoo, which I have now, we will show a beautiful picture of, it's not just, like, Star Wars. Like, each symbol and colour has a meaning to a very specific character or set of characters, and I did it on purpose. So I designed this tattoo. It wasn't just going, oh, I like these symbols, let's put them together. I went through a couple of stages of designing it in order to represent all the characters I wanted to represent. I did then kind of think I wanted to put more into it, so at some point I might add a few little other symbols into there. And the rainbow, as much as I say, oh, it's queer, it's a rainbow, again, but they're set out in that way to create the rainbow, but again, the colours each represent a different character. So actually, for me, I was going, I want to represent the particular characters within this particular franchise or story or whatever that really mean something to me in a way that is, like, incredibly personal, that you wouldn't necessarily know if you just looked at it. So, like, they're sort of secret little meanings, like my little Easter egg in this tattoo for myself, that if I explain to people, they're like, oh, that's so nice. But, like, you wouldn't necessarily know at first glance. You wouldn't even necessarily know it was a Star Wars tattoo at first glance unless you are deep diving into that Star Wars, Like, there's definitely... I think if you know the Clone Wars, you'd probably get it. But otherwise...
Yeah, the One Ring is definitely a little bit more obvious, but I had a couple of fun moments because I used to... When I lived in Durham, I was teaching at the university there. And I was in the religion department, so I had students who thought that I had, like, Sanskrit or something on my arm.
It looks like Hebrew as well. It's got a similar...
Yeah, I mean, they didn't know what Sanskrit looked like. They don't know what anything looks like, but they, it was a lot of kids that just thought, like, oh, that must be some religious language that you have put on your arm because you're here in the religion department. And I was like, I mean, it kind of is.
I mean... You're not wrong. Yeah.
I had one student, he came up and asked me what it meant, and I did recite the whole poem.
Did you do it in the language of Mordor, though? Because that's
I'm not that much of a nerd, but...
I can't do that. What do you mean?
No, I'm the kind of nerd that has read the Silmarillion and written many papers on it, and I could teach an entire class at Durham, and I tried to, but they wouldn't let me, all on religion and Tolkien and discussions of this and how I could do philosophy. I could do a whole thing on Foucault and Tolkien. I could go into it. That's my level of nerd.
I started learning Elvish. I can't remember very much of it now, but I did at the time. I like the fact that I translated my tattoo is... But these things, the whole point is that, like, you know, I went and I had enough of... I love Tolkien enough to go and be like, I'm going to learn some Elvish so that I can translate my tattoo correctly. So that it isn't just English into... oh my god, I've completely forgotten the script name. Wow, I'm not a nerd. I'm not allowed here anymore.
Fake Tolkien nerd?
Oh, what? Yeah, but into the Elvish script, and I didn't want it to just be like phonetic English into the characters. I wanted to go through into like the actual language, and then and I feel like that is a very specific thing to me. But also, like,
I was about to say, it's a very Tolkien thing as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's how I connect with the fandom on that level. It's like I wanted to... I don't want to say do it correctly, because that's not right, but do it correctly for me, I guess, and for the meaning I take from Tolkien is the world building, is the whole thing of, like, I can get this feeling when the music at the beginning, concerning Hobbit, starts playing at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring, and it's like, oh, I'm going home. You know, like, oh, it's okay, I'm safe. Oh,
I always say, so, you know, there's a song that plays in the Fellowship of the Ring, but like when it's like about to end, and if you listen, I listen to just the soundtrack because this is what I do with my life. The song is called "The Breaking of the Fellowship" for people who want to go and hop over and listen to it right now. But the opening 2 chords is where my soul lives.
It's just that it's that bit at the beginning of Concerning Hobbits, which I will not sing for the listeners because A, I don't want to get a copyright claim, and B,
a copyright claim.
That's how YouTube works, right? It's like if you do more than 10 seconds.
Yeah, but I think it has to be like matching the original. I don't.
Oh, good. I hope it's not like.
I love you very much, but I don't know if you
sound
like violins.
I think I could be. I don't. Yeah, but that's the other thing I was going to say. It's like I'm not going to sound that good, so I'm not gonna. But that, if you go and listen to Concerning Hobbits, which is sort of the opening section of the Lord of the Rings, after that, I feel it in the water. I feel it in the... Yeah, that bit. God, why do I know this so well? It's got that very specific few, like, little trill, and it's like, oh, the Hobbiton, the Shire, you know. And they had that at the beginning of the Hobbit films as well, and I was just like, oh, here we go. You know, like, the feelings. And again, it's reprised in Rings of Power at one point, and I was just like, don't do this to me. Oh my god. And so we do take, like, those things, they are part of us, right? They are like, you can't disassociate the thing of that particular piece of music, that particular feeling. They all go together and they're part of who we are. We've made them intrinsically, like, connected to us, almost in the same way we've kind of, you know, we've drawn them on our soul, if we're going to be very poetic about it. You know, they're there, and you don't lose that. I think even if you stop being the biggest, maybe the big fan you were as a kid or all this sort of stuff, it rekindles those emotions in a way that you can't necessarily predict.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think, have this emotional connection to stuff that is entirely illogical and entirely, you can't explain it. And so they have reactions in ways they wouldn't necessarily think they were going to have, because they do have that connection where they're like, I have made this part of me, and now you're saying a thing about it, so I have to react to that or whatever. And I think that is kind of the same thing with the tattoos, right? If someone came up to me and said, I don't like Star Wars, I'd be there like, oh, buddy. Well, that's fine. I don't hate you for it, but, like, depends on the way that you do. Oh, I think it sucks, all of it's stupid and dumb. Okay, cool. So, like, I've just made that a huge part of my personality. So, like, maybe we shouldn't hang out. Like, oh, okay, no. It's quite a difficult... You kind of take it quite personally, don't you? Because it's like, oh, I like that a lot.
Yup. Like, I can't imagine me ever not liking Tolkien or feeling emotional about it, but theoretically, playing devil's advocate, if I did ever, I think I still wouldn't ever regret getting the tattoo, because it is also a reminder of what was important to me at that time and all of those deeper meanings. You know, Tolkien is really important to me because of a lot of factors. It was the first class that I took where I can do pop culture studies as a whole thing, which is now my job, which is a huge part of who I am. I was also the first time that I read fantasy where PTSD was very well described, and as someone who struggles with PTSD, it was amazing to have that as a representation. Like, there's so many things that go into that even if I stopped liking Lord of the Rings as an individual, all of those other emotions, all of those other loves and meaningfulness that I felt in it is still going to be there and still a part of my background and a part of my history. And therefore I don't mind that it's also just a body at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Like,
flesh bag, walking around in it. It's important, you know, yeah. It's kind of keeping me going. Because, like, with particularly Lord of the Rings, like, Lord of the Rings is, I'm going to say Tolkien in general because it's actually The Hobbit more than the Lord of the Rings, I would say, initially, is this connection I have to my dad. And he read me The Hobbit when I was a kid, and he did things like recorded the Lord of the Rings audio drama off the radio for me so I could listen to it, because it was on at a time of day on like a Saturday or something where I can't remember, I couldn't listen to it for some reason, and he did that like every week without fail, the entire thing, and so I had it on like cassettes because I'm old, and my parents took me to see all the films, and like both my parents did an awful lot to be like, you love the thing, we'll give you more of the thing. But I think it specifically connects me to my dad in a way that is very personal. And particularly, so my dad passed away 7 years ago, nearly 8 years ago now. And so there is this thing of like, that's always going to be my thing for him. And that doesn't go away. I might stop liking it. I might start thinking, oh my God, these stories, what the hell? Or I might not like the next version of it, you know. They're doing some more stuff. You've got the Rings of Power TV show, and you've got like new Lord of the Rings films or something happening. I haven't really paid it that much attention because I can't be bothered to get involved with the fandom chaos that will happen around anything new. I might not like them, but that doesn't change the fact that there is a very, very emotional and familial attachment to those things because they remind me of him. And that's quite a hard thing to kind of equate, I guess, but at the same time, it's super personal, and I'm not the only one. Like, a lot of people have these connections to things from their childhood because of their parents or an older sibling or a cousin they're really close to. All these sorts of things. There's a familial or paternal or platonic connection to something because of somebody they loved or they cared about, or, you know, all that kind of stuff, who connected them to that thing. And so it's not just the thing, not just, like you said, it's not just Lord of the Rings, it's everything that comes with it that isn't necessarily the story or the characters, which you could identify with, and so hard, all this sort of stuff, but the other stuff makes it, I think, is what kind of, it's what drives it home. It's like what it makes it part of who you are, is that thing of like, this is because of my dad, this is because this gave me my path in life, this is because this connected me to my sibling, who I struggle to connect with on any other level, but this thing draws us together. You know, all those kinds of things, they're really important. And if fiction and fantasy and fandom is doing that for us in a way that maybe we wouldn't necessarily think of as fandom, like it's not the classic fanish behaviours, then that's really, really important. It's the same thing as like, and people go, oh, well, you know, me and my dad, we struggle to talk to each other, but we go to the football every week because that's the thing that we do. That's our thing. Yeah, it's the same thing, right? Like, my dad's not here, but when I watch The Lord of the Rings, I feel like he's still with me. That's still important. And it's like, you know, if I had a difficult relationship with a parent or a sibling, whatever, and there was one thing that kept us together, I think that would be quite an important thing. I mean, I can't speak for everybody. Obviously, everyone's relationships are different. But, like, I've heard enough stories and enough anecdotes and enough, like, shared moments like this to know that, like, there are these threads that run through fandom that connect us to other people, even when those people aren't there for whatever reason.
When I was doing research on the Legend of Zelda series, there was somebody that I talked to who got into playing it from an uncle, and they ended up later, I think it was later they found it rather than when they were playing through it. They found his old, okay, Auntie Vivian's going to explain to the young kids how video games used to be. There used to be, you could get, the game guide books that would help you through things, because there wasn't the internet to look up the answer to solutions. So he had one of those game guide, lengthy books that was incredibly annotated. He had sketched out his own map of the very first Zelda game that was, stuck in the book. And he's like, I still have this, and when I play through the game, I get that game guide out. And I have my uncle's game guide. So, yeah, it's these things that, when you do research with pop culture, you get these stories all the time of, this is my uncle's game guide, this was the story that me and my dad listened to, this was the... there was another one where someone was saying that they used to play Zelda, sat on the floor and their sister would just watch. She wasn't really that into video games, so she would watch. But she ended up having a recorder, and she would play the songs along with what he was doing. And so it was this, again, it was a sibling thing. It was me and my sister would play this. And I don't know what the relationship is now, but they'll always have the music from Ocarina of Time because of their experiences and their memories of doing this.
And I think that's what we talk about when we talk about fandom becoming part of who we are and being part of our personalities and all this sort of stuff, is those... It's not just, oh, I really like this thing, so... some of it's just, I really like this thing, let's be fair. But, there are these moments of completely formative moments that just shape us. Mm. And at the time, they would be so almost innocuous. You wouldn't even notice they were happening. You wouldn't think, oh, this is a formative moment in my life. You never think that about formative moments, right? But so many people can pinpoint them, or pinpoint things that they did as being this is what really gave me that relationship, or gave me a part of who I am, or shaped the path I had in life. People talk about seeing Uhura on Star Trek, and how seeing a black woman on TV for the first time, and not a role, and in inverted commas described as a black woman, she was just part of the crew.
And an intelligent woman.
Exactly, she's intelligent, she's cool, she's capable, she's really sexy, but in a way that's totally her own. She's not being sexualized, she's just in control of herself. And you then get people like Whoopi Goldberg being like, that's what changed my life. Sitting and watching Star Trek and seeing her change my life. And then Whoopi goes on to be one of the most successful actors.
And was on Star Trek.
And was on Star Trek because of that. She literally called up Gene Roddenberry and was like, I'm being on Star Trek because of these reasons. And he went, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, fine. And it's those little things is she might not necessarily call herself a part of fandom, but I think she'd definitely call herself a Star Trek fan, and she has. And it was because there was a connection. And it's wow, that thing, that means something to me in a way that wouldn't necessarily mean something to somebody else. So whether that's a personal, familial connection like I've been talking about, or whether it's that thing of this means something above and beyond maybe what even the creators intended. Yes, obviously Star Trek was very clearly intended to be representation, but I don't know if they knew exactly what that representation would mean to people. I doubt it. It's hard to know that, isn't it? But these characters mean so much to me, or us, people in general, and I think it is because humans are very good at becoming emotional about things. We get connected, we get attached, and when there's an attachment, not just to, I love this thing, but you love this thing with me, or that's quite a difficult one to break then, I think.
I think it's mostly because stories, we can't remove things from context, right? No. We can't in anything in life. You can't remove the context of society or culture from stuff. You can't also remove the context of yourself from things and look at things, quote unquote, objectively. It just doesn't, that's not possible, which sucks as a, supposed scientist.
It'd be really helpful if you could do that, wouldn't it?
But that's not how that works. And so that means that anybody who comes towards a piece of media is not only bringing the context of the society and culture that they're looking at it within, they're looking at it within the society and the culture that it was made in, and then they're also bringing with them their whole baggage of being a human.
So I was at Star Wars Celebration Europe, and I was cosplaying my favourite Star Wars character, Tick, from the Bad Batch, which is exactly how to say his name every single time, in a bad New Zealand accent, because the actress who plays his little sister has a proper New Zealand accent and is from New Zealand. So I love him so much. I loved him since he first appeared in the Clone Wars, all this sort of stuff. And I kind of didn't know why. There was part of me was like, he feels like me. This person, he feels like me. Okay, this is really interesting. And then in the most recent season, it was pretty much confirmed, though they didn't use the word because it's Star Wars and therefore you don't use terminology from not Star Wars. It was basically confirmed that he's autistic, and he talks about processing things different. Like, there's a whole episode where he really goes into detail about talking about how his brain works and how hard things are for him, and talking and openly about being autistic. And I cried through the whole episode because I was just like, it was the first time I'd ever seen something in pop culture not just be like, oh yeah, they're autistic, whatever, and with like a sort of a few throwaway comments. It was the first time a character had sat down and talked about how difficult that is and like what that means and all this sort of stuff, and like had this really intense heart to heart about things, where somebody was angry at them for not expressing things in a way that they expected things to be expressed, and they were like, well, no, I just can't. Like, the line is, just because I do not feel things the same way as you does not mean I don't. And it's like, oh, you know, that really hit home for a lot of people. And so at Celebration, like, everybody who was cosplaying Tech had this, we were less like, you know, it was like neurodiverse joy. I'd be like, you're like me. Oh my God, you're like me. And we kind of all found each other, and it was like really, really sweet to be like, oh, these people, and this means so much, and all this sort of stuff. And like that kind of thing, I think, is those moments of like, oh shit, you know, this is why it means so much. And like, I don't think I'm ever gonna not love Tech. Like, he's incredibly important to me and incredibly special, even if we are only getting 3 series of the show. Like, they've confirmed it, the next season is the final season, that's all that's happening. And like, I don't see him becoming less special to me just because he's not on TV anymore. Also, like, this comes out way after the finale, and I still don't want to spoil it for people just in case, but like, whew, I was not in a good place after that. So like, those kind of moments and those things that we've talked about, all of these come together into this thing of like, I could not take the context of me being autistic away from this so that it wasn't like me. I couldn't just see it as like, wow, this is a really good piece of character development. It was so close to home to be like, I've had these conversations. I've had these, like, they had these pauses where you could see him thinking about how to, and I was like, oh my God, like, it was so perfectly done to how autistic people often present and how they struggle to communicate things. It was incredible. And a lot of people, not just me, a lot of people recognised it as that. And I kind of feel that those things are, it would be impossible to, the Star Wars universe, like I said, does not have a word for it, right? They didn't use the word, but you cannot take away the context of me as an autistic person living in a society that recognises autism, seeing that as what it is, even if it doesn't have the context of the word, because of the descriptions and because of the way he talked about it and the way he acts. So it's like, holy crap, that's a really big thing, and I can't change that about how I perceived it. Other people might not have perceived it like that, but they're wrong, and I'm totally right. So, you know, I've done the research. I know everything about it. But yeah, I think like that is more important. I've gone off on a tangent. I'm so sorry. But like, this stuff is like, when you kind of talk about these things where you want to make it, you want to tattoo it on your body. It's so important to you.
Yeah.
It's got so much meaning. It is those things. But oh my God, please stop me talking, because I want to keep talking about Tech. Like, I'm just gonna talk about Tech, guys. We're there.
I mean, this is supposed to be an episode on tattoos, but it does become about it's a lot more, it's about why people get tattoos, and the fact that it is, I think, often seen as, as my tattoo artist felt, as something that is a throwaway, it's a goofy thing, but I think that it's losing the sense of how meaningful pop culture can be. And yeah, sometimes you want to get a fun tattoo because it's fun. But I think even then, right, like, people find things fun for a reason.
Yeah.
And that is an inherent emotional connection. Even if you're not sobbing out of the love of seeing representation finally for the first time, even if that's not what's happening, that still is something that is, there is something happening that is connecting you to this piece. A couple of years ago, there was somebody who was on Love Island who I did not realize, we rewatched quite a lot of the season, way later, and I didn't realize how late he came in to the show, because I felt like he was this huge presence. He was one of the most popular people on that season, and he came in really late, which is that's not normally how it goes for people who come in really late. But he was a vibe, man. Like, he walked around with a towel, like, wrapped around his head. He would wear, like, 2 pairs of sunglasses, and he was, like, wearing, like, a flowy robe that he took from somebody, and, like, and he was just he was there to have the best time of his life, and he didn't really care what else happened. And somebody got a tattoo that was very stylized, like, line art type thing, of him with the 2 sunglasses and the towel up on his head. And there was an article on, like, the Daily Mail or whatever that was written up about it. And the number of people that were like, this is stupid, like, you got a Love Island tattoo. And their response is like, well, because he's such a cool vibe. Like, I want to be reminded of this vibe. I want to be reminded of the attitude that this person held in their life. And yeah, it was a bunch of fun for this person who got the tattoo, but it's a bunch of fun for a reason. It's a bunch of fun because they're like, I get you and what you're doing, and I want more of that in my life.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what we were talking about with the Tolkien Society, is that fun can have meaning. You don't have to make it a super serious sobbing about an animated man on the telly. You don't have to have it be like that. It doesn't have to be the super emotional connection. Fun is meaningful in its own way. That's why humans have fun.
Yeah.
We of course, play is how we can make connections, how we learn about the world around us. Play and exploring and then having a good time makes us happier. So why should a tattoo have to have super meaningful whatevers? Why can't you just have your favourite meme tattooed on you because I love that meme, it makes me laugh every time I see it, so I'm gonna have it on me forever. Let's go meme. Which people definitely do. Or like they get something because it makes them laugh, or it makes them smile, or it makes somebody else smile, or like that every time somebody might see a little funny tattoo of a dog or something on your leg, people might go, that's a cute dog, and that's just as meaningful, right? That has just as much valid meaning because it's silly and it's fun than, oh, I got this tattoo for my dead dad,
Yeah.
Those are 2 ends of it's a horseshoe, right? Like, they come back to the same place. They're just as important as each other. And I think getting the silly dog tattoo is just as important as the dead dad tattoo. I now kind of want a silly dog tattoo because it would make me laugh. But
I would just love to go into a tattoo parlor and be like, I want a dead dad tattoo, please. I want it right next to the silly dog, please.
I can't believe we're going to have to edit so much of this out. Oh god, the silly dog and the dead dad together.
Now the ultimate is if your dead dad tattoo is the silly dog tattoo.
I feel like that's a way to do it.
If you have a dead dad silly dog tattoo, please contact the show. Comment. Like and subscribe.
We're sensible.
Shall I calm you down with talking some academic shit?
Please. That would be fun.
Some way less fun stuff. Although, if I were to get a tattoo of an anthropologist, I'm not a big fan of, like, people's faces on me. So I would have to get something else that... there's an amazing quote from this anthropologist, which is a discussion for another time because it is not suited for this one here. But it's Mary Douglas is one of my favorite anthropologists because, again, representation matters. When I was in university, she was the only woman that I think I ever read. She's great. But she has a quote of, "Dirt is matter out of place," and I love it so much. But anyway, I'll explain that quote at a different day for a different topic. But she also has this other idea, which is the two bodies. And people have kind of taken this idea and done what academics do, which is to add and critique and adjust it. And now there's people that are like, there's 7 bodies, there's 10 bodies, there's 12 bodies. But we're gonna stick to the 2 bodies because that's the basics. But basically, Mary Douglas said that we each have 2 bodies. There's the physical body, the biological thing, the flesh bag that is here. But there's also a social body. And the social body is the body that is typically dressed, that is read by the rest of society in a particular way, that is understood from a socialized perspective, which is actually different than the biological body. So the social body is the way that we communicate with the rest of our society through our physical body. So you communicate gender in a particular way by dressing and moving and acting in a particular way. You communicate standing, authority by dressing in a particular way. I remember being critiqued sometimes in academia because I wasn't dressed in a particular way, which is both a misogynistic gender conversation as well as an authoritarian thing. Wearing jeans and a t-shirt was not seen as authoritarian when running a classroom. So, you have to dress
I went to art school, so, like,
I was in a religion department. They're lucky I wasn't smoking weed sitting on a table. Like, I don't know what they expect from me. When I went to my undergrad, that was what I was used to, is people wearing messy shirts and cargo pants, and they were the ones sat on top of the desk telling you about how life really is, man. And then, and that's how it was in Florida. And then you went to Durham University, where they got a stick up their asses. No offense, Durham, they were wonderful, but you do. And it was, everyone was wearing, like, suits. And I was like, what are you doing? This is a religion department. I thought that you all were like, we're not math, we're not business. What are you doing?
My tutors just turned up with paint all over them they'd be standing outside smoking a rollie and then come in and just be like, right, paint, let's go, because I went to art school and
so
I love art school, was great.
So I ended up being the teacher that would come in and throw up a video of someone playing through BioShock Infinite, and we would just have conversations about God through that, because that's what I did with
We're
my
having
life.
that discussion at some point.
If you let me go full religion on this podcast, oh boy.
I just want to talk about BioShock Infinite.
There's pause, and we will talk about this when the recording stops. But basically, this idea of communicating the social body is, I think, where tattoos are really fascinating, right? Because that is essentially what you're doing, is you're transforming the physical in order to communicate the social. So by having the Lord of the Rings tattooed on me, it is on my physical, biological body, but it's communicating my social stance. It's communicating my position to fandom. It's communicating my meaning that I've attached to it. And it's also signaling to other people who love Lord of the Rings that this is somebody who also loves Lord of the Rings, and we chat and we be friends. And in fact, that has happened many a time, including I was at archery and was shooting, and it was warm enough for me to be in my short sleeves, and there was an older man who also had the same tattoo on the same arm in the same place, and was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And we ended up chatting about Lord of the Rings and archery for a really long time.
Archery. But this is it, right? This is, I think, where I was trying to go until I got really emotional about tech and had to stop myself, is that, like, I put the physical thing, I put the cosplay on my body, right? And so did the other people so we could find each other, right? We were like, oh, you like me. Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. You know, you love the thing too. And cosplay particularly, I think, really does that, because as much as, you know, you might see somebody walking around in the t-shirt of the fandom and all this sort of stuff, and you could be like, oh, cool, you really like the same fandom. When somebody has gone so far to make and or buy, or a mix of both, a version of that character and physically put it onto themselves and become the character in one way or another, that is, you gravitate to each other. You're like, oh, same hat, you know,
yeah.
kind of thing.
I mean, you best believe that Mary Douglas's Two Bodies is coming up in my cosplay book.
Fuck you.
Of course.
Yeah. But, like, it's very important. Like, that is the social thing. You're dressing yourself to be, like... And, like, so if you've got tattoos or something, you see them and you're like, oh, you have done a very... You know, it's not just... I think wearing a t-shirt is cool, but, like, it's the extremity of it, I think. That thing of, like, you have gone above and beyond to show how much you like this thing. You have spent a lot of money wanting to like this thing. You know, tattoos aren't cheap. Cosplay is not cheap. So, yeah, no, these are not cheap things. And then, like, you just kind of, you find other people who love it as much as you, and you make the, and it's like, oh, we have the same brain in at least a little bit of a capacity. You know, you can have that, you're having that conversation at Archery where you're all like, oh, what is exactly the same? That's amazing. You know, I mean, obviously it won't be exactly the same, but it's pretty damn similar. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, I guess part of me is a bit sad that maybe my tattoos aren't as recognizable or obvious for what they are, but it does mean that when people do get it, they really get it. And that's very exciting. It's not, you know, it's not just, oh, it's the Death Star or whatever. Like, it's not a more obvious Star Wars thing, I guess. Those are also cool tattoos. I do like them. But with this, it's so specific. And when people get it, it's like, oh, woo, we really, really like the same thing. Okay, this is cool, you know. And so we can have those, like, little emotional connections with each other. And I think that's the thing about, like, yeah, it's fun and silly, and having a Star Wars tattoo can both be crying, sobbing, meaningful, but also fun and silly meaningful, because it is still Star Wars. I will still completely admit to the fact it's laser swords in space, and that's dumb. I love it, but it's dumb. Makes no sense. Mandalorian finale, what were you? Oh my goodness. Anyway, you know, little green cute man. Dude, what is Grogu? I don't know. But these things are so important. That, like, that thing, I love the idea of the two bodies, though I was thinking about, like, is that why autistic people really struggle with so like, oh, maybe our other body is very different. Like, our social body
it's also the difficulty, I think, with the social body is that it is all unspoken contextual, mm-hmm. which is obviously things that autistic people can struggle with, is the unspoken socialized contextual bodies and communications.
The worst thing, yeah.
Yes. But that's basically, because it is that thing of, it is the fact that I am supposed to be wearing a nice outfit when I am teaching, and supposed to a outfit that communicates that I'm a student, even though I was kind of a student at the same time. And so it's like, then what do I wear when I'm both? You know, it's those things. It's the fact that when I am introducing my partner, I want him to look nice, so that way my dad thinks he can take care of me, because he kind of is. It's these various things that are unfortunately embedded in some things that are problematic in society, like ableism, like racism, like sexism, but are there. I think that there is a really cool thing that, although there is a lot of issues in society, that sometimes when you are aware of it, you can change things to not be as much of a problem.
Yeah, or you can... I am that person. I'm going to be a problem on purpose. So
well, but that is...
kind of, exactly. You know, you lean into it. You're like, you know what? I'm weird. I'm leaning into the curve. You know, because I'm a trans non-binary person. I have had physical transition, and I've had social transition, and both mm-hmm. are very different. But because of the fact that I am a nerd, and an autistic nerd at that I kind of go with, well, I'm not gonna fit in, right? This just isn't happening for me. So let's just own it. I will get Star Wars tattooed on my body. I will do these things that make me happy. I'm gonna dress in a way that people are gonna be like, what is that? And I think that's what we're trying to convey with this whole episode, is that thing of, like, if these things become part of you, they become part of who you are, and they have this meaning, and they are your kind of social thing, the other people who like that or are like that will converge to you eventually. You will find each other. And by kind of announcing your presence in that sort of way, by going, well, I'm just owning this now, you're more likely to find those people. You're more likely to be like, I love Star Wars because I have it physically embedded in my skin forever. And I hope that other people love Star Wars in that way. You know, it's how I met my partner. It's how I've met some of my closest friends, is through fandom and through expressing it through cosplay, or expressing it through tattoos, or expressing it through fan fiction even. You know, these things where it's like, oh, this is so cool, and you love it with me. And I think we've said that 100 times, but that is what all of this kind of boils down to, is sort of finding your tribe and finding your people, and whether that's developed together through moments where you share, or whether it's because you both kind of go, oh, wait, are we thinking that? Oh, wow, that's really cool. You want to talk about that thing with me? Oh, wow, yeah. And I also like this. And then I think we talked about, like, with the knitting episode, where we talked about the connection between, like, you have one connection, which might be your fan thing. And so, oh, yeah, we both like the same fan thing. That's cool. But if we also both like this same other thing, and there's a second connection, then that builds and builds and builds, right? And I think that's kind of what this is as well. It links very well into those ideas that we were talking about with the kind of the crafting and the knitting stuff, that people's fan cultures come together and converge in different ways. And the more you express it, the more likely you are to find people who are just as fun and weird as you are.
I mean, that's what happened with us, right? We met, and we were supposed to be talking about more intellectual things and work stuff. And as you can tell from this podcast, we talked for ages about not the things. Yeah.
Well, if you've got to episode 10 of this podcast, you know that we're going to go off on a tangent.
You can imagine how that coffee went.
Yeah. I think we were there for 5 hours or something.
It was something very long.
It was a really long time. That was great though. I love meeting people like that, and I love finding these moments of like, ooh, gives me the brain tingles, the happy little brain tingles.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that fun moment of, I mean, when I was there, it didn't feel like 4 hours or 5 hours or however long it was. It was that weird moment of, I think when I was leaving, I was like, it's so strange that I only just met this person. Like,
yeah,
you would, if someone ran into us, they would have thought that we were old friends catching up, and we've known each other for years. Because that's what it feels like, I think, when you meet these people for the first time, that it's like, oh, you're my person, and you've been my person forever, I just didn't know you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's cute. But, like, I think, you know, I remember logging into one of the interviews I did for my book, if I haven't talked about this book enough, and seeing behind him, he had a load of Star Trek action figures, like, on the wall, like, on little shelves, and like little scenes. It was really cute, and I really liked it. And I was just able to be like, oh, that's awesome, you really like the original series. And he was like, yeah, I mean, I like all of Star Trek, but the original series is my thing. And so we were able to talk about the original series, and like, it's not particularly my thing, but it is my parents' thing. And so I was able to kind of be like, right, I know something about this, we can link into each other. But going back to like the idea, because I actually think this is something that people do a lot without realising it, is things like the amount of times I would get in a cab with my dad and he would end up talking about football with the cabbie. My father, who has never watched a match of football in his life, as far as I was aware, I never saw him watching it, but he knew enough about that thing to make a connection with this other person in a way that would create a sort of social bond or a social norm within the cab ride, I guess. I don't know. That people do it all the time. They find that thing like, right, this is going to be something we can connect on and we can talk about, and so we can human together. Otherwise it's going to get real awkward real quick. I think we all do that. We're looking like, what is it that we can talk about? Okay, this is our small talk thing. Like, except like it's never small talk, it's always big talk, really. But it's just a way of humans connecting with each other. I think it all boils down to that, is it's human connection, and for some reason fandom is deemed as a silly human connection. I don't know why. It's because of the laser swords, isn't it?
I mean, potentially.
Yeah.
It could be the translating things into Elvish bit as well, but
You're just calling me out. What? At least it's not Klingon. That's you now. I'm being deprecating about Trekkies. I'm sorry. I love you, Trekkies. You're great. But there's nothing wrong with loving things. I think it was Hugh Laurie said that he loved going to fan conventions because he got to meet people who loved things unashamedly, and we don't do that very often. Society tells us we can't, and fans don't do that. They just love the thing and they don't care. I really liked that. I've always remembered that as a thing of like, love things unashamedly, because why shouldn't we? Why should society tell us we can't do that?
It is the thing of why is it weirder for me to get Elvish tattooed on me than if I did get Sanskrit or Hebrew? Like, why is one deemed as more important than the other one? And it's just, what it is it's context, right? It's that one person has Hebrew is more important to them, which is fine. For me, Elvish is.
Yeah. I feel like most of what we talk about with this podcast boils down to the fact that humans really enjoy doing human things, and maybe we should just let them.
Yeah. And I know that we're preaching to the choir, because there's nobody that's going to be listening to this that's like, I mean, I think fans are stupid. Let me listen to this podcast.
But I also think that it's worth remembering that, like, while we're talking about what I would guess would be visual pop culture mediums, so things like Star Trek and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff, this is the same for people who get song lyrics tattooed on themselves.
Oh,
yeah. Or people have, we talked about Taylor Swift, people have Taylor Swift things as tattoos, people have Beatles things as tattoos, all this sort of stuff. People have their favourite footballer's number as all this sort of stuff. Like, these all are the same thing, and in some sense, for some reason, the one with the laser swords and the hobbits is not as cool as the others.
I mean, can you imagine the depth of nerd that I would become if I actually did get Mary Douglas's primary thesis tattooed on my body? Like, of course that would be insane and nerdy, but I'm thinking about it.
You should do it.
Dude, if I had the money, I would.
See, I kind of feel like it's one of these things that I have considered, and I'm still considering getting a tattoo for what would be probably my first major international cosplay competition if I manage to make it through next year. And I've genuinely thought, like, if I do that, if I manage to get to an international qualifier, I don't even care if I win, I just want to get to the qualifier, I would get a tattoo to represent that. Because for me, like, cosplay is so part of who I am. It is my major special interest. It is a major part of my life. It is something I have written about extensively. I've talked about extensively. It's how we met. It's how I've met a lot of cool people in my life. It's so important to me that actually for something like that, where it's like, I managed to do this thing with cosplay that's super important, I want to get something to represent that. Makes sense to me. But for other people, they'd be like, what? It's the dressing up thing, Ollie. And I'd be like, yeah, it is, isn't it? The silly dressing. But, like, I was talking to my friend last night about how next year Worldcon is coming to Glasgow. It's the first time it's back in the UK for, I want to say 9 years. I went to it when it was in London, and so I'm really excited to go to it in Glasgow. And I'm going to enter the cosplay competition. And the reason I'm going to enter it is because it's the longest running and the first cosplay competition that was ever set up by Myrtle Douglas, Morojo, who was the person who we can pretty much trace back the first time people wore costumes to a convention was her, really. In the kind of, I guess, modern context of pop culture. Like, we've talked about the Shakespeare Jubilee and all that kind of stuff. But the first time that somebody really wore what we call a pop culture costume to a pop culture event in the era of media was Morojo. Someone's going to argue with me about this. I don't care. And she was the one who really pushed for the competition. It was set up by her. She literally ran one in her hotel room one year because she was like, well, we can't do it at the convention, so we'll do it here. And then the year after that, the convention went, yeah, okay, we'll do it because everyone wants it. And so it's been running since 1941. For me, to do that competition is super meaningful. It's like my little pilgrimage, to go and do the competition that Morojo set up is like, that's super meaningful. Does it mean anything to anyone else? Probably not. I'm not going to Mecca, but it's important to me. and I'll probably cry about it, because of course I will. I'll get super overwhelmed and emotional. But if I manage it, if I do that, then I want to remember it somehow. You know, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, like we said, this all boils down to those moments. It's like, doesn't matter if nobody else gets it. It genuinely doesn't, because you'll find the one person who does, and the one person who's like, wow, that's so cool, or yeah, and then they're your people forever, and you can't get rid of them. Damn it, stuck with you.
Well, it's also ultimately, it's also for you, right?
Exactly.
It's when I am seeing my arm, I get a little happy. So yeah. Make yourself happy. Get yourself a Mary Douglas tattoo.
That's it. That's why we're signing off. We're doing that. That's the lesson, the moral of the story. Make yourself happy and get the nerdiest damn tattoo you can. I hope we've convinced some people to get tattoos in this
God,
episode.
I hope so. Send us.
Yeah,
oh my God,
great.
I want to see y'all's tattoos.
Yes, if you guys are listening and you have nerdy tattoos, please show us them.
I want to
I
see
would
them,
love to
and
see
I
them.
might steal some of them.
I get so excited when I see them. Like, there was a guy at Discworld Con who had, because I went to Discworld Con, who had the coolest tattoo. It was all like hexagons together, and each one had a different like fandom thing in it, and they all like linked together. It was really cool, and like I can't even describe how cool it looked. It was amazing, and like really almost photo detail on things.
Ooh.
It was genuinely cool. I was just like, oh, what? It blew my mind.
Anyway, do all the podcast stuff.
Oh yeah,
the follow and the like and the subscribe and the
please do
rate
that.
and the what else?
The reviews are great. Reviews are really helpful. They really help. Please do that. They help other people find this, whatever this is.
Whatever this is.
And we will be back in 2 weeks' time. I've remembered our release schedule now, which is great.
Right in time for us to be slowing down.
Anyway, so yeah, please do like, subscribe, send to your friends, send to your family, annoy them with this until they listen to it. Leave a review, tell us if you like our rambling. Don't tell us if you don't like the rambling, we don't care. And we'll see you next time. I've been Holly Swinyard.
I've been Vivian Asimos.
Bye!
Bye!
Thanks for listening. Remember to like, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast, and do give it a share. Tell your friends, family, and fellow fans and get the word out. You can follow us on social media, links in the show notes, as are some links to further reading. Who doesn't like a reading list? We are nerds after all. Music for this episode was Nowhere Land by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons Attribute 3.0. This episode was produced by Vivian, Asimos, and Holly Swinyard.